Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nick Adams, and I work here at PDFTron on the marketing team. I'll be the host today, communicating with you in the chat in the comment section on the right-hand side of your screen. If you do have any questions, please type them out, and Aaron will try and get to as many as he can today. There will be a designated question period at the end as well. But don't worry, if your question isn't answered, we will be following up with you after. So we'll take it up with you then. As a thank you for attending today, we'll also be doing a draw for a discount on PDFTron Tech. So it's good for either $1,000 off WebViewer, 500 off server side, or we're also offering 3 months free for PDF.js Express, which is like a subsidiary of PDFTron. So also available for that too. Our speaker today is Aaron Gravesdale. Aaron leads our solution engineering team here at PDFTron, and he has more than 15 years experience in developing, architecting solutions in document management and PDFTron technologies. He's worked directly with a full spectrum of customers and designed solutions around PDFTron's toolset. He lives in Vancouver and likes to get out in the outside with his dog and his partner and explore the great outdoors. Thanks for joining us today, Aaron.
Thanks so much, Nick. Appreciate it. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining here today. So yeah, as Nick was saying, I'm a solution engineer at PDFTron here. So sort of the plan for this webinar is to kind of just do a bit of an introduction, to PDFTron, just in case you haven't really come across us or used our technology very much before, just to give a bit of a history, and some background about our offerings. And so what I'll do is kind of go over our product line from sort of high level, and then jump into a demo of WebViewer, which is our sort of web-based toolkit for document processing. Kind of go over some features from a high level there, and then what I want to do is kind of discuss a couple of upcoming features in some depth. So we have a couple of sort of exciting new pieces that we're offering around making collaboration easier to set up and kind of a bit more featureful than what maybe sort of the default collaboration setup can be for PDFTron's technology. So we have some ready to go components that can make it a lot easier to get going. So I'll kind of talk about that in some depth, and as well we have some new functionality around document generation too that's pretty exciting. So what I'm going to do is kind of show a demo of that and just sort of walk through how that works. And then, as Nick was saying, at the end of the session, we'll have time for questions and so on. So please feel free to post those in the chat or the questions window, and then that way we can address whatever concerns people have at the end, or any additional topics that you'd like more clarification on. So what I'm going to do first is kind of just give a bit of an, sort of a high-level introduction to PDFTron just in general. So if you're not really familiar with our company, PDFTron started in the late 90s, really around the time that the PDF specification was first published. And so our initial toolkit, which we still actually offer, is called PDFTron SDK. And it's a native toolkit that really covers the entire document lifecycle. So functionality around the entire processing and workflow of documents within an organization. So we sometimes break that down into kind of 4 stages, mirroring sort of the stages of life a little bit. So we kind of have the beginning of the document's lifecycle, where it might be generated from scratch or converted from another file type. Like you might take an image and convert it into a PDF, or take a Word document and convert it into PDF. We have a lot of technology around sort of the improvement stage of the document lifecycle, so sort of the maturation of these documents, doing things like taking multiple documents and merging them together, or splitting pages out from a PDF document, doing things like adding page numbers or stamping watermarks onto a file. Maybe it might entail optimizing a document to make it smaller and more efficient to work with, or flattening it to simplify it. Just sort of these different operations to kind of bring a document to the point where it can be usable by a lot of people. And then we have functionality around sort of the everyday usage of documents. So, kind of the typical things that people might do with desktop PDF software of, loading up a PDF document, viewing it, scrolling through it, searching for text, making annotations or highlights or measurements on top of a document, toggling layers, and maybe seeing total ink coverage, things like this. And then we have functionality around the end of the document lifecycle too. So what one might do when sort of finalizing a document, and maybe that means taking, say, like a PDF and converting it into an image for export, or a PDF-A copy for some other usage, or converting it into Word if that's one's archiving format. It might entail doing something like redacting personally identifying information from a document so that you can release it to the wider public without revealing confidential or personal information. Or it might entail something like digitally signing a document so that way it's kind of finalized at that version, and you can see if there are any changes after it's been signed. So really, what we've done is try to develop a toolkit that is kind of an across-the-board solution for different organizations to just handle whatever the document needs are that crop up during their workflows. Initially, we just offered this toolkit, PDFTron SDK, for Windows. It was actually originally sort of targeted for .NET on Windows, but over time we added support for a variety of other languages. So, not just .NET, but, C++ and C as well, along with Java and Python. We've recently added much improved Go bindings, and we can talk directly to C as well. We also have bindings for PHP and Ruby and Python through our Swig wrappers, which are on GitHub. And in addition to kind of expanding up a set of languages, we also expanded up a set of architectures that toolkit can support as well. So, originally it was a Windows library, but what we did is we compiled that toolkit over to Linux and Mac OS, and as well we've added support for Android and iOS. So we can run on those mobile devices as well, and we have language bindings for those too. So things like Kotlin or Objective-C bindings are built into our toolkit. And what we did a few years back was sort of expand this out a bit by taking that native toolkit and compiling it over to JavaScript. And what that enabled us to do is to take that full gamut of functionality around the full document lifecycle, creating documents, improving them, using them, finalizing them, that whole array of functionality for PDF and Office and other file types, we've been able to bring directly inside of the browser in pure JavaScript. So that means that the end users don't actually have to install anything. There are no plugins or native applications that they have to install. They can just bring up a browser, point it to a site, and get started processing their documents right away. And that's kind of what I wanted to really sort of showcase most of all, I think, during this webinar. So what I'd like to do is kind of bring up our demo here from this menu, and just kind of go through how WebViewer works, what are some of the basic functions, and kind of use that as a springboard for whatever follow-up questions attending this webinar might have. So we can actually get to this live demo by going here to PDFTron.com, and this menu along the top is a really useful one. So if we go to Documentation and Web, we can click Launch Demo and bring up that live demo. But we have some interesting stuff here as well. So just to give you a bit of an orientation here, so if you go to Documentation and Web and then Guides, that brings you here to our different guides for getting started with WebViewer, especially with different frameworks, or integrated to different backend solutions. So if you have documents on Salesforce or Sharepoint or something, you can just go right here and find, easy step-by-step guides talking through how to put WebViewer into that kind of environment. We also have videos walking through the process as well, just to make it a bit more clear in case that might make it a little less error-prone to get it set up. And the same thing is true for the different frameworks we have here as well. In addition to getting the setup information and so on, we also have detailed guides around a lot of the features that we have inside of WebViewer, kind of the major use cases and value provided by WebViewer. So I would recommend coming here as well and kind of getting an idea of some of the different features that WebViewer can offer. It's a pretty wide array of functionality. Also from here, we can get to detailed samples, and these are actually included with the SDK as well. But you can try them out online here, sort of like samples that are really targeted to specific use cases. And you can also download WebViewer as well, along with other toolkits. So we actually offer the full production builds for you to download and try out. So it's not like you're downloading a demo version or anything like that. It's actually the full production build. And when you deploy it, by default, it runs in demo mode. And in demo mode, you actually have access to the full functionality of the toolkit. So all functions are enabled, and you can try out any of the features you'd like. And they work exactly the same way as in production. Really, the only limitation is just that a watermark is sometimes added to output. So that's sort of the only sort of gotcha, really, with the with running an evaluation mode and trying it out. So I'd really recommend grabbing a copy of one or more of our toolkits and really putting them through their paces in your environment. You can really try them out with your documents in your environment. You could even have users sort of test it out and see if it would work for them, and run it through QA and all of that, really all while running in demo mode. So we definitely encourage anyone to grab these builds and try them out. So what I'm going to do, I think, initially here is just kind of launch up our demo here and kind of go into just sort of an introduction here of what it's like to use WebViewer. So here, what I've done is just launch the default viewer, and that's bringing up a PDF document. And how WebViewer is rendering this document is that it's actually downloading the bytes of the PDF into the browser's memory. And then what it's doing is performing the rendering here inside of the browser in JavaScript using code that we wrote here at PDFTron. And we actually developed this rendering ourselves from the ground up. So that means that any issues with the rendering, those are things that we can address ourselves in-house. And it also means that we can kind of leverage that here inside of WebViewer and provide this kind of sharp vector rendering here directly inside of the viewer. Now, this is very similar to what one might see kind of out of the box with sort of the default PDF rendering engine that's built into different browsers. But our rendering solution is a little more advanced than what is found with kind of these free PDF viewers. So, for example, we're able to handle very high zoom levels. That doesn't so much matter here with some of these text documents, but if we were to do something like open up a vector-based document, like say a blueprint or diagram or something like that, then what we can see is that that kind of detailed vector data still stays sharp even when we zoom way in. And that means that things like measurements and other details that might be problematic with lower quality renderers. Here we're able to zoom in and see them all accurately rendered. That also can matter a lot with smaller text. In some documents, like legal documents that might have fine-grained text on it, or especially if one is using a very detailed character set, like Japanese, Korean, or Chinese character sets that have very detailed characters. Fine print there really means that you need a PDF viewer that can handle high zoom levels. Additionally, we have a built-in support for layer separation too, and you'll find this on many construction documents where it's necessary to turn off different layers here inside of the rendering. And so what our toolkit can do is turn those off while rendering the document. And that way, if one has, for example, if you were using this document in the field and going out into a building and trying to read some of the pipe information here on this blueprint, by being able to turn off some of those additional layers that might make the content a little confusing to parse and understand, by being able to toggle those OCG layers, we can get a sort of clear rendering of the document. And not just with OCG layers, but also with some of the other more advanced kind of rendering features that are available in the PDF format. So for example, we have support for rendering different separation layers, so color separation values. What we can do is actually directly turn those off and on, and do things like calculate a total ink coverage value for whatever ink that we've placed on the page. So In addition to this kind of rendering capability, we also have our own built-in text and searching capabilities too. So if I bring back sort of this default file here, kind of our the initial document that we loaded up, I can scroll through this and kind of read through this text. But if it's a very long document, then what might make sense is to be able to just search through it. And here we have built-in searching using our own text extraction that again, we built ourselves from the ground up. And what this does is kind of reconstruct the order that the text appears here on the page. That's actually a little different than what might appear in the PDF document itself at a low level, because within a PDF page, text can be specified actually in any order or in almost random order. But in our toolkit, what we do is determine where each string is located on the page, and therefore, when you search through the text, it's done so in the order that you would read it, rather than it might be within the lower level page. And that means that we're able to search through here as if we were working with a text document or an Office document, and kind of traverse through this sensible reconstruction of the page. We're also able to extract things like ambient text from the document, so that way, when you're searching through these search results, you can actually see kind of the context that the search hit was found in, and that way you can be sure that you're jumping to a relevant portion of the document content. In addition to this kind of interactive searching, we can also extract the full text from the document itself. So we can just extract that as essentially a string or a text file, and that way we can do things like return that in the code here on the web page. And this could be useful for doing something like driving a screen reader for users who maybe are visually impaired. And so that way, they could still access this content and consume it despite that visual impairment. And additionally, you could say grab this text and feed it into a full text indexing engine. So if you had some sort of third-party full-text indexing engine available in your backend, you could feed this text into it, and then users will be able to search across a set of documents kind of at once, almost sort of like Googling them, if that makes sense. Just kind of searching that large set of documents and getting all of the search hits back at once. What we find is that having access to the underlying PDF document itself here within the browser really opens up this wide array of functionality client side. And of course, these same features are available server side or within a native desktop application as well, because we've taken our toolkit and ported it over to different platforms and made those same exact APIs available essentially everywhere. And just getting back to that previous note there, that also was where we could change color separation and toggle them off and on. Here. So here in this document, we have a variety of Pantone colors within the file, and we can programmatically turn those off or on. And that way we can get an idea of the total ink coverage over each pixel. So here we're over specific Pantone colors, and we're able to see that we are seeing a certain amount of ink drawn on the page. And we also have support for overprint and custom ICC profiles as well. So that kind of covers some of the features that we see in viewing. Now, we actually are able to view very large documents here within WebViewer as well. So in addition to these complex documents that might have layers or different kinds of colors, we often hear from customers about the frustrations in using lower quality toolkits with large documents. But with WebViewer, we're able to take advantage of some of the features of the PDF format to enable loading up very large files. So for example, this one is many thousands of pages. And we're actually able to load that up right away within the viewer, as well as jump to kind of random locations inside of the document, and then have those pages be rendered as well. And how this is working under the hood is that these are linearized PDF files, which means that they're saved on disk, grouped by page. So all the bytes for the first page are sort of first within the stream of bytes within the file, and then the bytes for the second page, and then the bytes for the third page. Very similar to how a video is structured, so that when you're streaming like a video, you get those first frames within the first block of bytes, and then you can move on to the next frames and so on, discarding the bytes you've previously downloaded. And so that's how we're able to support these very large files and scroll around in them as well. We can jump here to another page, and then WebViewer can throw away the bytes that it's already downloaded, because it knows that it can always go back to the server and re-download those bytes again. So overall, that leads to a very very usable experience for users, as well as sort of a constant memory footprint for the browser. That also can really play a big factor when loading very large documents, not just in terms of files, or not just in terms of pages, but also in terms of file size. So here, for example, we have this very large 2 GB document that's just made up of some very large images, and we're able to start displaying that right away and scroll through it and so on without crashing the browser, because of this technique where we can download just parts of the document and render it without having to have the entire file downloaded into the browser and resident in memory. So getting back to kind of more normal, everyday usage of maybe like a little bit of a smaller document here, that's a born digital document. Now the previous one we saw was just made up of very large images, so that didn't really have any text in here, and I kind of wanted to demonstrate some text-based features. If that's a kind of a common scenario for you, like if you happen to get a lot of documents that are made of scanned images or faxed over, then our OCR technology might be of some interest. So this is a server-side component of ours that can essentially take in an image version of the document, and then once OCR'd, can turn that into one with selectable text on it. So that way you can still get those benefits of being able to search through the document's text, find particular areas that are relevant to you, and it also opens up, kind of the possibility of text-based annotations as well. So here previously, I couldn't really select any text or highlight it or anything like that. But now that it's been OCR'd, I should be able to come in here and do things like underline the text or strike through. And that's in addition to the more graphical kinds of annotations that we have built in. So here, for example, is a kind of a cloudy annotation. I might kind of change that a little bit, just because it's maybe not the nicest looking right now. That's maybe a bit of a nicer cloudy annotation. I suppose I could have just changed it here on this one as well. So as you can see, we have a lot of styling options here for our built-in annotation types. This rectangle one, for example, we have a choice of different border types, or how thick that border is. We can customize what it looks like, both that stroke color here on the edge, or do things like change the fill color. We want to change this around. And really, essentially, our annotations and UI are quite customizable in general. So we have these default annotations that are built into the viewer, but if you'd like to change around anything about how these annotations behave, or the appearance or anything like that, that's entirely under your control as well. So we have guides in the WebViewer documentation that walk through how to go about creating your own custom annotations. So we have some samples here that kind of detail how to go about making custom stamps, or here in this example we have an example of making some custom annotations. We have somewhere in here as well sort of a sample that walks through creating, I believe it's sort of a triangle shape, and so you can see when making your own custom annotation here inside of WebViewer, sort of the different hooks you have and the different ways that you can construct that annotation, not just the appearance, but also the behavior, so that when it's created, you have different hooks available then if you want to change around how it behaves or what the semantics are. And additionally to that, this is actually how our collaboration technology works as well. So as you can see, whenever we make an annotation, that also creates a comment thread here associated with that annotation. So here, if I click on this cloudy init, what I can do is come in here and type some information about it, like, let's review this. And that way other people who are reviewing this document can see this information and can see my content, my comments that I've made on it, and that way I can collaborate with other people. And one way I could do that is simply by downloading the document. So within WebViewer here, if I were to download this file, then by default what it will do is save the annotations into that PDF copy that I'm downloading, and then I could send it off to someone else and have them also collaborate and comment on it. Maybe mail it back to me, and then we could communicate that way. But kind of a much easier way is just by collaborating in real time at the same time and concurrently. And that's something that our toolkit supports as well. How it works is that inside of WebViewer, what we can do is keep the underlying PDF document read-only. And what we can do is save any changes either to annotations or to form fields. So if you're filling out a form or signing it or something like that, then we can isolate any of those changes as well into a separate layer that's XML based. It's in a file format called XFDF. And since it's separated from the underlying PDF document, it's actually a very small file and one that can be transferred between different browsers very quickly. And so that's actually how we've gone about creating our collaboration and enabling users to communicate with each other. How that actually works from the end user's point of view is that essentially they're able to carry on a conversation with their colleagues here within the browser. So actually kind of the easiest sample for that is this annotation permission sample. And what this shows is different users logging in and using the document at the same time. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Maybe I'll switch to the next page. I'm going to set actually the view mode here to be something a little easier to work with. So I'll just do fit width here. And then open up this comments panel here. So by default, what I'll log in as the Sally user here, who's just sort of an ordinary user with no special permissions. And so let's say that Sally comes in here and maybe underlines some of this text. What Sally can then do is alert another user with @ mentions. So we have those built in. We have a custom list of users that you can pass in when WebViewer is constructed, as well as handlers for how we might alert them when a comment is made that mentions them. And so Sally can say to Justin, "Hey, Justin, let's review this," and post that up. And then now Justin, can get an alert and see that Sally wants this part of the document reviewed. We actually have annotation states that can kind of drive some of this forward as well. So we can say things like, not accepted or rejected or something along those lines. So this Justin user here can then see that there's a comment that needs some attention. So let's say Justin logs in, goes into here and says to Sally, looks good. Post that and can, using these annotation states, say something like, accepted or rejected. Now, since Justin is logged in as an administrator, Justin can actually modify the annotation made by Sally. And as well, Justin can make their own annotations here on the document. And we see that the Sally user can also go back and modify their own comment as well, but can't do that to the annotations of other users. Sally can only come in here and comment. And so Sally might alert, say, another user, let's say Brian. Say, Brian, could you take a look? post that. And then Brian, who's a read-only user, essentially can come in here and just see the comments and see the annotations that have been made on the page, but not actually come in and modify anything. So what we see is that these different users of WebViewer can come in with the correct permissions and therefore be given sort of control over which things they can do and can't do. Those are actually set here in the client-side JavaScript, essentially after the WebViewer instance is constructed on the page. At that point, you can set with a string the annotation username and whether they're read-only or not, so whether they're essentially an external user, or if they're an administrator, you can set that here as well. And then the actual collaborative part happens by sharing this XML between different users and between different client-side browsers. So that's something that in the past we've made it a bit incumbent on our clients to sort of build themselves. So for example, if you have an existing server, what you could do is inside of WebViewer, you could have it save off the XML for that annotation right after it's made. So in WebViewer, there's an event called Annotation Changed. So whenever you add an annotation or modify an existing annotation or delete one, that event is raised and the XFDF for that annotation is created. And so at that point, you could really do whatever you want with that XML. You could send it by email, or you could send it up to your server, or if there's a WebSocket connection, you could communicate it that way. And we have some existing samples that show off some of those different approaches. For example, we have this one based on SQLite and Node.js, just sort of a sample that we've provided the source code for and posted here on GitHub, just as kind of a getting started point. And how that works is that it will create a WebSocket connection to each browser and then transmit that between different clients. We also have ones that are based on Firebase as well. So if you wanted to sample based on Firebase to get started that way, that would also be another way of getting started with this. But we have in our latest release some new functionality that's available. So what I might do is kind of jump into that a bit and just kind of talk about some of our new features, and then maybe start digging into some of these questions, because I see there are quite a few that have been posted. So in terms of making collaboration a bit easier to set up, what we've done is create a new offering. It's called collaboration.pdftron.com. Just jump right to it. And what it is a couple. It's made up of Node components. So as we say here, it's a set of plug-and-play modules for enabling real-time collaboration inside of WebViewer. So it's a very quick setup and works with any database. So if you have an existing database where you store user information, or it would make sense to sync annotations through, that's something that can be hooked up to the solution. Essentially, what we have are APIs for resolvers that mean you can, connect your database into the server side of this solution. And we also have a client-side component that fits in as well. And that way, the server and client can communicate with each other instantaneously and transmit these annotations between two viewers of the same document inside of WebViewer. We have built-in user authentication based on single sign-on, but that's something that can be customized. And as well, we have user permissions that are pretty flexible. So in terms of creating or editing or deleting annotations or documents, that's something that you can control through our platform here. So you can control exactly what permissions they're allowed to have. And just as with this annotation permission sample that we were looking at just now, we have full support for @ mentions, so you can alert users over email, or if you have something on your server, maybe like a task list or something like that, you can alert them through that. We also have support built in for things like synchronizing the scroll position of two different web viewer instances, logging, open source samples, and built-in testing as well. So if you wanted to test the connection of this collaboration server with your database, then that's something that's built right in and makes it easy to get detailed problem reports. So again, this is at collaboration.pdftron.com, so it's quite easy to get started with and set up. So yeah, I would recommend checking that out, especially if Node is a platform that you're working with. So that's something that's available now. I'd recommend anyone to try it. The other kind of big new feature that I wanted to show off in this demo today is around document generation. And that's something that we're going to be releasing in our next version of PDFTron SDK, which is slated for release hopefully sometime next week, if all goes well. And some of the functionality that we're going to be adding in is a sort of revised document generation and document editing capability within our toolkits. So we do have some existing capabilities for editing PDF documents inside of WebViewer now. If you've used our content replacer APIs, those are some of the ones that let you go in and replace tags with text or images. But what we found is that kind of workflow was a bit limited, is specifically around reflowable text. So, there are a lot of instances where people, want to take a template document and fill that in with names or locations or other bits of information. But the problem is if the text is too long, given the limitations of the PDF format, at times that could include other text or, even do things like run off the end of the page. So what we've done is kind of rework our approach to document generation, and what we've done is put together a document generation solution that accounts for the reflowability of text. And so we can see that here. What we have are sort of template placeholders here inside of this document. This is originally a docx file, and so we just placed these kind of mustache template placeholders here. And here inside of this API, we've said, for each of these tags, what should we replace it with? So that could be text, as in this case. And here we've added in some JSON capability. So, if we add that in, then it can read an image along with the width and height, and replace the content with that as well. So here, if I click on Submit Query, as you can see, we've replaced those placeholders with the appropriate text, including very long bits of text that have reflowed to the next line, and we've replaced it with images as well. So in general, this is a kind of a much improved experience over our existing content replacer functionality, and so it's a much easier experience for things like generating invoices or receipts or other sort of standard letters for your users or your clients. So this is something we're pretty excited about, and this is something that we'll be building on in the future as well. It's on our roadmap, for example, to support tables inside of this solution. So that's something that we're hoping to have available in the relatively near future. So let's see, so it's 11:38 right now. So I thought what I might do is just kind of jump into some of the questions that we have here. And then if we have time after that, I might go into a bit about digital signatures and signing and so on. We might just kind of go based on the questions of what people are interested in. So I'm just going to kind of go through the question list here. Someone was asking whether it's possible to extract the text in a PDF by a position, so like the left half of the PDF document. Absolutely, that is quite possible. So our text extraction samples show a couple of different ways of extracting text through our APIs, and one of those is based on semantics, so you can extract the text of a given page, but you can absolutely also just extract from a particular rectangle on the page coordinates. Someone else was asking, can you show how well PDFTron works with Sharepoint? So unfortunately, I don't have a Sharepoint instance here available, but here within our guides, we do have our Sharepoint sort of integration walkthrough, and through that we have a video that shows setting it up inside of SharePoint, setting WebViewer up there, and so in there, if you watch that, you can kind of get an idea of what it actually looks like when it's embedded inside of SharePoint. So I'd encourage you to try it. Just give that a look. And if you're looking for anything further, please do feel free to get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to demo in more detail. Whatever you're looking to see. You can get in touch with our support actually through support and resources. And then if you're trying things out, then probably the free trial tech support is the best form to fill out. And that way that'll get you in touch with my team, and then we can get on a call and maybe demo the feature and talk about the overall use case that you might be trying to solve. Let me jump back to our site here. So jumping back into the questions. Someone was saying, what happens to all the comments when PDFTron needs to update? Can we transfer all of the notes and comments to a new set of PDFs? So if you do change the PDF document, then annotations are, it's possible that the annotations won't be positioned over the same content. So annotations are positioned on a page absolutely. So it's essentially saying like, okay, 1 inch down from the top and 1 inch over from the left, then we're going to place an annotation on the page, and it's going to be 1 inch wide and 1 inch high. That's essentially how annotations are placed within the PDF format. So if I were to take those annotations and apply them over to a new PDF copy, they might be positioned differently. They're still 1 inch down and 1 inch over, but the content that's there on that page might be different. So that's something that's really sort of built into the PDF format. And in order to make that use case a bit easier to manage for users, what we've done is add the ability to diff 2 different documents, to essentially compare them. And we have a sample of that here. So we have a couple of different samples regarding comparison. One of them is one where we extract the text of the 2 different documents, and then we perform sort of a text diff that we're showing here to users, and then they can kind of scroll past the text that hasn't changed and see exactly content that has been modified between the 2 versions. We also have a more visual version of this kind of comparison. So that's shown here in this demo. And what this one will do is do a pixel by pixel comparison of the 2 versions of the document. And this one is actually one that really might be quite useful if you have a bunch of annotations over the 2 versions of the document. That way, you'd be able to see, whether the annotation is pointing at the same thing and whether you should transfer it to the new version of the document. And you can see, exactly what has changed here on the document and see whether that's something that annotation sits on top of. So this document comparison sample is actually quite featureful. So we have a lot of things built in for, like we have this tool here for handling scanned images that might be off a little bit or differently sized or rotated or something. And we have some other alignment tools here as well. Like we have the ability to draw a couple of arrows and have them be aligned and scaled that way. So really. Whatever your users need out of comparison, this sample can be a pretty good starting point for doing so and for supporting kind of advanced comparison features. We're also coming out with a new text comparison in the next version that will essentially create sort of a side-by-side text diff with annotations for each of the parts of the text that have changed. So that's another feature that we have coming out in the next version. So I hope that kind of answers the question, or that might have kind of delved off into a different area, but that's in general how we would advise working with different versions of the same document and making sure that you can handle both. Someone else is asking, can WebViewer be implemented in Angular? And we do indeed have Angular-based samples as well. So, here within our frameworks, you can see that, we have React, Angular, Vue is very popular, Electron, Node.js, and then in terms of integrations, some of our out-of-the-box integrations are listed there as well. Let's see. Someone was asking about how much can be customized within stamps. Can you add your own values? Can you add interactivity and pull-down menu and checkboxes too? So really anything with the WebViewer user interface can be customized. We actually have on GitHub our full UI posted. So here, yeah, we'll see on the view source code. Actually, just Google this. Your UI, it's right here. So it's a React-based UI, and really the entire source code is here for you to take and try out and customize however you'd like. So if there's ever anything inside of the WebViewer UI that doesn't work as you'd expect, or if you'd like to be able to streamline that a bit, you can always go in and change that because we provide the full source code here. You can also make more fine-grained customizations to the WebViewer UI. So, for example, we have high-level APIs that let you go in and turn on or off different buttons, or just sort of insert your own, say, custom annotation here within this UI. This sample here kind of gives a bit of an idea about sort of the possibilities of this high-level UI. So, for example, if we wanted to do something like remove download and print buttons from the viewer, that's quite easy to do. And in fact, it's just a couple of lines of code here in the WebViewer configuration happening after we instantiate the WebViewer on a page. A lot of WebViewer's UI can be tweaked in this manner, but if there is anything that isn't available through these UIs, you can always go in and customize that through those APIs. Then there's this code where you can go in and customize. Regarding custom stamps, that's a bit easier because they're, especially static ones are ones that we're able to just sort of have a built-in initial set for, but that, yeah, you could go in and add your own custom values for it. And as well, say if you had an image on disk or something like that, then our stamper tool lets you bring up a file browser to go and find an image file to stamp on the document as well. But we absolutely do support customizing these too. So if you wanted to have your own built-in custom stamps, that would be possible. And regarding like a custom stamp with a drop-down menu or a text field or something like that, that as well would be possible. Probably it would be easier to create an entirely new annotation, an entirely new custom annotation for that, because then you'd have full control over exactly what it looked like. And instead of sort of working with our APIs, to take the stamp and add new functionality to that, you could simply sort of have your own stamp that had those additional features. And again, our guides for custom annotations would probably be the best place to get started there, because we have these sort of walkthroughs of exactly how to go about customizing all the features of a custom annotation. Someone was asking about the different flavors of PDFs. What can you generate that Adobe can handle? And I mean, since Adobe isn't our software, we can't always comment on what files it can or can't handle. But I will say that the PDFs that we produce are compliant with the PDF specification, unless you go in at a low level and intentionally add something that maybe makes it non-compliant. But our toolkit, whenever we generate PDF documents from scratch, those are always compliant with the PDF spec, and that's true of our other file formats as well. So we're able to take different documents and output things like PDF-A which is a sort of subset of the PDF standard, we can output XPS, images, HTML, SVG, and Word as well. And for all of those, we are compliant with those document formats, and we make sure that we are complying with all standards. That's actually why we chose that XFDF format as well. If you haven't heard of it, so that's the XML format which we use to transfer different annotations between different browsers. And that XFDF format is one that's also standard within the PDF industry, and actually is used within Acrobat. So you can import or export XFDF within Acrobat as well. And our goal there is just that we're making sure that we're not locking you into any particular proprietary format or anything like that. We want to be sure that we're working with open standards and complying with those. Let's see. Someone was asking, if we're using WebViewer and we're loading the file from a file server, if we were to actually modify the PDF, how would we get that out so that other users can review those changes? One thing to remember here is that a big part of this is what kind of modification one is making to the document. So remember, what we can do is isolate annotation and form field changes into this XFDF layer and leave the underlying PDF read-only. So in that case, it's very, very easy. The only thing you have to transfer around is this XML data, and you never have to touch the PDF, and you can just leave that as a read-only static part of your site. And as we saw, we have these collaboration solutions to let you easily transfer XFDF around. But in some cases, you might actually be modifying the underlying PDF. And since WebViewer gives you access to doing things like manipulating pages or stamping new content onto a page or redacting information from a page, it might very well be the case that you've actually modified this PDF inside of WebViewer. And in that case, what we have are APIs that let you save it back however you'd like. Here inside of this open save document, part of the WebViewer documentation, we have how one might go about saving inside of the browser. So essentially, what we can do if we've modified the PDF is we can save a copy inside of the browser's memory, and then what you can do is post that to a REST API of yours in your environment. So if you have a file server, what you could do is stand a web API up that lets you stream PDF data into it and then can be saved into the file system. So that's how we recommend saving a modified PDF. In terms of loading a document, we can load it in a variety of ways. So when you're instantiating WebViewer, you can tell it, here's a URL of my initial document. So when you start up, just load this URL, and that's what I want to see in the viewer. We also have the load document API if you want to maybe switch to another document from an existing WebViewer, or sort of load up WebViewer without a document and maybe let the user choose a document from a list. We have a variety of other ways of loading documents as well, though, and these can be quite interesting if you're maybe streaming data down from a REST API or grabbing PDF data from a database. So a lot of times that kind of data might be base64'd. So here's an example of how to take that base64 data, decode it, and then load it up inside of the viewer. Just a little code snippet showing how to do that. And we have some different samples for, depending on how you might happen to get that data. So as a blob or an array buffer, or how you might load it up from the file system or from Salesforce. As a sort of a useful example of how to do that. And we have some more information about loading options there as well. But, just FYI, if you're curious about loading documents, this is also the same place you'd go to get information about that. Someone was asking, can a digital signature be done with a certificate from a PIV CAC card in the browser? And I suspect that should be possible, but it would be tough to say for sure. I'm not exactly sure how PIV CAC cards work in terms of certificates. So one way that you can perform signing with WebViewer is to take the user certificate and put it inside of the browser's memory, loading it up from the card or from the file system or however you'd like to load it. And then once WebViewer has the certificate there, it can perform the digital signature on that document using the user certificate. So if you'd like to sign in that manner, that's one method for doing so. We're also looking into Hsm Based Signing. So those are ones where the actual signature is calculated, within some external environment. For example, Microsoft's Key Vault on Azure works in that manner, and that's something we're working on adding easier support for. Some of our customers have gotten that working, but it's entailed some customization of our signing code, and we're in the process of making that a bit easier. We've been sort of revamping our digital signature support, and so in our latest release, for example, we have a web-based digital signature validation sample. So that's new functionality that we've added in, and so we're working to make this kind of an easier to customize part of our APIs. But absolutely, we have full support for doing signing inside of the browser as well as server side as well, as long as you have that certificate handy. Someone was asking, for the manually integrated web viewer, how do we add signature fields to existing PDF forms from the viewer header? And is it possible to realign the header bar items? Certainly it's possible to realign the header bar items. Once again, we have the full UI source code here on GitHub, so you can change around the layout of any of this however you'd like, removing things or streamlining them to make it just more approachable for different users, so that rather than having a million different buttons, they have just the ones they need. So that's definitely a good idea. And in terms of adding new form fields, so we have form building capability directly inside of WebViewer here as well. If I can find the sample for that, 1 second here. It may be under edit content. Sure isn't. Inside of these samples, it might be a little easier. Here we are. Okay, so this shows, for example, how I can go about adding a new form field onto the page. So I can, call this, let's say, field 1, and add a new field onto the page here. And so this is just, displaying it first as an annotation, so I can go and resize that field and position it exactly how I want, and then I can click Add Fields. To add another signature field if I wish, and then Apply Fields will actually convert those into a new field on the document. And here, the field type, it looks like those were text fields I was adding, but we can add signature or some other types as well, like checkbox or radio buttons, depending on what kind of form field you need to add. And as well, we can add, read-only or multi-line flags. Whatever the requirements are for that form field are configurable. Again, because we have these APIs for manipulating the PDF document at a low level, if there are any additional values you need to set or custom properties, those are all embeddable into the PDF. And we have support for so-called Acro.js or JavaScript-enabled form fields here on the PDF document. So you can add that into the document, and we also have support for consuming that in the viewer too. So I think we have some files that kind of show that off. Some of our, I think this one might have some form field like validation, for example. So here we have a bit of JavaScript associated with this form field. And so if I type in this non-email and tab away, it'll give me it'll pop up this dialog here saying it's not a valid email address, PDFTron.com, and that one is a valid email address. So when I text away from it, it works correctly. And things like calculating different values inside of the field, or hiding or showing different fields. That's all supported here within our viewer by default. And that also can be turned off as well. So there's an API, Enable JavaScript. So if you don't want the JavaScript, that's something that can be disabled wholesale. And we do work across all modern browsers. So that includes Chrome, Firefox, IE, Edge. Because we're based on JavaScript, any browser that supports modern JavaScript is one that we could support. Someone was asking when collaborating, could you have user 1 see users 2 comments, but user 1 cannot modify or delete user 2 comments? And can there be another user who can make changes? And certainly, yeah, you can configure these sorts of permissions, however you'd like. We have these built-in, abilities to, turn off being able to modify any annotations, but you can also, tweak that however you wish and do things like, disable, a particular user's annotations, maybe even hiding all of them or marking them all as read-only. Someone else was asking, do you guys have any way to graphically specify OCR coordinates for text extraction? That's absolutely something we can do. That sample doesn't show it, but here inside of our OCR APIs, we go into that a bit more detailed in the guides. If we actually go to the OCR APIs here, you can see that we have the ability to ignore a particular region or only pay attention to a particular region. Specify output options. Yeah, so add zones for page, or add text zones for page, and we have APIs for excluding as well. So add ignore zones. So those APIs are how you'd go about saying just OCR this area. And then here in the chat, someone was asking how the snap function works. So I'm not sure how much time we quite have left, but here, when we're loading a PDF copy here in the browser, we can read the underlying vector information from it and use that to enable measurements to snap to those points. So that way it's much easier to measure the distance or area of something. Let's see, and collaboration should work with SharePoint. There should be nothing stopping that. Let's see. And someone was asking whether they can do 2-point selection of rectangular and square annotations like are done in certain CAD software. And that's something you could customize the viewer to do pretty easily. Because we have full support for custom annotations, so you could modify that UI so that when you click in one spot and then in another, you would just draw a rectangle rather than giving that kind of resizing. Let's see here. Let's see. So yeah, I think that might be a good stopping point here for us today. Given that we're sort of over time a little bit, what we'll do is kind of go through the remaining questions and answer those on a one-by-one basis. Overall, thanks so much for attending this here today. There were some great questions here posted. Really appreciate everyone's time. And please do, check out WebViewer in your environment or our native toolkits as well. Definitely our collaboration.pdftron.com is a great thing to check out. Also for getting collaboration set up, quickly and easily in your environment. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to us with any further questions. Again, support resources and then free trial tech support. We'll get you in touch directly with myself and my team. So yeah, we're looking forward to hearing from you, and have a great rest of your day.